Can I now request Dr. Alok Pandeyji, Director IMS, to start the panel discussion with the panelists? We have Dr. Shri Rohit Bagade, Dr. Charan Singh, Shri S.C. Agarwal, Shri Akhil Chaudhary, and Shri Naveen Gupta, part of the panel. To you, Dr. Pandey.
Varun, thank you very much for organizing this wonderful webinar. It's great to listen to the initial opening comments of all the panelists, the industry view. Dr. Labneesh Channa, Sri Ashutosh Chadda, Sri Akhil Chaudhary, Mr. Atul Kumar Gupta, Sri Rohit Bagade, Sri Naveen Gupta, and Dr. Charan Singh. Now, as I look at it, we are in the midst of a great crisis. You know, there's something called government response tracking, and there's a stringency index which has been created by Oxford University. And what it says that India's stringency on the lockdown in COVID was 96 in April, in around May, 75 on June 1, it's 79 still today on August 15. And that means that when you say cash is God and cash is king, we are seeing the God being demeaned. Why businesses are not functional? There's a huge trouble of, operating capacities are very limited. In fact, we've not allowed the country to function for quite some time. And amidst this, there's something called the liquidity crunch, which has happened. So much so that one of the questions which came on this, on the chat, I was seeing that when PSUs and defense organizations do not pay even after 180 days, how do MSMEs maintain the cash flow? Dr. Labneesh Channa talked about the cost reduction. Sri Ashutosh Chadda talked about rebuilding supply chains. Sri Akhil Chaudhary talked about technology being implemented. Mr. Atul Gupta talked about the steps taken by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in terms of providing support and say, remember, let me tell you, I was keen that he be here because there's a lot of gap in India in terms of accounting education and accounting practice. In fact, everywhere, if you look at it, the impact of fintech, we are talking fintech, but most of the institutions, whether they're engineering colleges, whether business schools, the fintech education is way behind where the practice is. For the first time in history, I work very closely with Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, where I'm an independent director on a 1,000 crore firm, which talks about 350,000 entrepreneurs. And I see that for the first time, the government is being seen faster than the educational institutions and even some of the corporates in terms of these areas. And I work very closely, of course, with some of the people in the ministry where I realize that fintech has a bright future. But yes, as I said, this is a difficult time, the COVID time. Cash is neither king. Cash is so, scarce in variety. They say, you only feel the need for oxygen when it is not there. You know, oxygen and love, we only, need it when we don't get any. And cash, the new oxygen, is not available. So much so that the government is unable to give GST compensation to the states. So in these times, this wonderful discussion has given some ideas to people, listeners, and I feel that we need to have a little focused approach on some of the questions. In fact, the fact is that when you talk about something like timing, liquidity, efficiency, risk management, and compliance, and as Charan Singh said, I hope I'm not I'm audible. Pardon?
Audible.
So as Dr. Charan Singh said, that there's something called regulatory interface, a lot of digitalization and fintech, and in fact, it has helped reach, banking and capital markets reach to a far audience. So, be careful as to where we are going. In fact, the background paper circulated by the ASSOCHAM talked about, a large canvas, cash flow prediction, managing internal, external funding, managing profitability, managing compliances, safeguard against fraud, cybersecurity, real-time cash flow visibility, and so on. So what I sincerely believe that as we go forward in today's discussion, we would actually look into these issues a little pointedly. I'll start with Dr. Charan Singh, the chairman, Punjab and Sindh Bank, former professor at IIM Bangalore and a long-time central banker. Sir, you've been very clear when you said that fintech, the way it is being implemented, has led to fair amount of increase in banking in something called financial inclusion. And as I get around, despite despite the Jan Dhan schemes and all, we still are around. They say 80% inclusion, but around 53% of the accounts in banks are actually functional. There's a lot of stress on the banking system. If you look at it, the NPA levels, but for the Supreme Court's verdict yesterday, where the 6-month moratorium on the interest rate payments has been removed, kind of, and the banks have started, getting their interest back, and there was a question on interest on interest. We have a huge NPA problem, which may compound if the economy does not start immediately. Under these circumstances, do you think the banks have enough money to invest in fintech? Are we going towards a future where bigger technology spend is possible?
I would like to firstly say that on September 18th, we have Dr. Ratna Sahai from the International Monetary Fund, Washington, D.C., speak to us on fintech and financial inclusion. SOCHM will be circulating that, and she has done a cross-country study, and on the basis of the cross-country study, they have a paper which will be discussed. And I'm sure SOCHM will circulate to everybody, and you will get a chance to see it. If you have time, please come and attend the lecture by Dr. Ratna Sai. She is an international expert. You'll see from her presentation. The immediate question that you have asked is on the banks having enough resources to invest in fintech products and the rising NPAs. Now on NPAs, as you know, the situation is very grim. Banks only reflect what is across in the country. Banks are not away or not isolated and not separate from the country. If in the country there's a lockdown and if there's no production taking place or less production taking place, and if there's stress in the corporate or in the MSME sector, it is obviously going to reflect on the balance sheet of the commercial banks as well as their profit and loss. Obviously, when there's a lockdown, the NPAs are bound to increase. They will increase because 6 months of lockdown means many things will not come back to normal in immediate period. Many things will change. Many industries may move on to new ventures and new things, and therefore NPAs are expected to increase. That is one thing that is already anticipated. It's once in a century sort of a situation. Nobody knows how to handle this situation. Nobody, no economist per se can predict as to what will happen when the lockdown opens. Because there's a bakery and he could not open his bakery, is it necessary that when the lockdown is unfolded, he will come back to his bakery? I'm not sure. Some people who are in the MSMEs with solid real estate probably will come back to the same work they were doing, but others may find it different and may move on. Similarly, there's been some positive things. You look at the pharmaceuticals, they are doing very well, but in tourism, travel, hotel industry, we do not know what shape and how are they going to shape up when post-COVID happens. Now, therefore, NPAs, the trend of NPAs, the trajectory is really very uncertain and nobody will hazard a guess, including in India and foreign countries. The second issue that you flagged, in such uncertain times and challenging times, would banks really like to invest in fintech? I would say yes, they would like to invest in fintech. Why? Because it seems a great business opportunity. You must have noticed under Jan Dhan, when the Prime Minister announced that he's doing Jan Dhan, 36 crore accounts were opened. Initially, everybody used to say, oh, these accounts are good for nothing. No money will come in. We have just invested. We do not know whether there will be enough money which the banks will be able to recover. Over a period of time, we found that many of these Jan Dhan accounts started getting money. When the direct benefit transfer would take place, these Jan Dhan accounts would have money. The banks benefited by those balances. So sometimes there's an investment for a year or two, there's a gestation period involved, and once that is over, it starts showing up. Fintech is a very promising thing. If we are able to use fintech, and given what I have said, that safety walls are there, regulatory bodies are there. We need not have 70,000 fintech companies operating. We could have main 10 companies operating in India on which we are solid. The central bank is regulating them. The confidence builds up and this can spread across the country. This will be more like an investment which will start showing results, also beneficial for both the bank and the people. And when I said engage NABARD and SIDBI, what I meant is you just build trust and you expand the base. So the cost comes down, worth it. Thank you. Can't
Dr.
hear.
Pandey, you're on mute.
Is it?
Yes, no. Yes.
Yeah, sir, another question, related question to this is that banks in India still are in a very, very traditional mode. We still are talking about, banking, where we talk about opening bank accounts, where we talk about, of course, we are a developing country and these are things. But of course, there are new age banks like HDFC Bank. There are new age banks, several of the private sector banks who've done a great amount of technology infusion. And globally, you see banks actually becoming a digital knowledge service business, and how far you see the future, how far do you see Indian banks have to go? Today, when someone opens a bank account, let me tell you, it gets connected with the government through, you've got a PAN number given and an Aadhaar number given. You need to open a demat account. The demat account gets connected with it. In fact, India is very low in terms of financial inclusion. If you talk in terms of capital markets, very few demat accounts, though we have around 8 crore mutual fund folios. But we have very few demat accounts in India. That shows the market is very shallow. And one of the reasons is that, our banks are unable to teach or convert their customers and their savings into investments, and where this is where banks actually lack. So when do you see Indian banks transforming into digital knowledge service businesses, rather than just being a place where people park some money in fixed deposits or savings bank accounts? How soon do we see it, sir?
Look, first and foremost, I've written a lot on public sector banks because they really account for about 75 to 80% of banking business in the country. Let me tell you, whenever there is crisis, it's the public sector banks which have the trust and people go and place their money in it. And amongst the public sector banks, it is the State Bank of India which enjoys the maximum trust. Despite that, there are other nationalized banks too. What does it convey? It conveys the bank provides you the services that you demand of the bank. Bank is not separate from the society. If the society wants the bank to serve as deposit hubs, the banks will provide you deposit hubs. If the society wants the banks to be serving as locker rooms, they will provide you locker rooms. If the society expects the bank to provide them digital advice, they will provide you digital advice. So the banks move along with the society. The few names that you took of the banks, these are the private sector banks. And please remember, the trust that public sector banks has much more. Fortunately or unfortunately, the fact is the trust which the public sector banks are having is much more. And that is where you would have noticed even in COVID times, all the deposits have come, right? So the question that you are asking, when will these commercial banks, mainly quote unquote public sector banks, change? They will change as the society's requirements change. Many times, given the size of the banks and the expertise available there, they can guide the society in some direction. And let me now tell you, if you look at the technological innovations and revolution in banking, who has led it in our country? State Bank of India. The handheld devices, the term was being experimented by State Bank of India as early as 2004 and 5, before the handheld devices really became popular. So State Bank of India's core banking, State Bank was leading in it. ATMs, State Bank of India was leading in it. If you look at one point, the private sector banks were talking about ATMs. But State Bank of India, with its sister concerns, overtook the network of ATMs, and State Bank of India has the largest network of ATMs very soon. So the point I'm trying to make is technological frontier approach has been much more in public sector banks than in any other bank in our country. Even today, if you look State Bank of India's Zono Cash scheme, very innovative. So yes, once the society is looking for technological advice and advice on digital finance and fintech, the public sector banks are already playing an important role, and they will be able to play a much bigger role as the society begins to look at it. When and where do I see it? I see a very big change. Well, historically, I did see how State Bank of India revolutionized the ATMs and the core banking. Then comes the 2014 when we did we did our Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana, opened accounts. After demonetization, there was a spurt in digital transactions. And now, I think post-COVID, again, you will see a spurt in digital transactions. Once this happens, then requirement, recognition, availability of fintech products will start. And then almost every bank will jump onto it and start providing fintech digital finance in a bigger way. So I would expect, if I have to give a time frame, between next 5 and 10 years, you will see a digital revolution in our country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Taking, one good thing is that, we've got during this lockdown, the data suggests that around 6 lakh crores worth of deposits were found, were there as compared to last year, when in the same period, 1,76,000 crore worth of deposits were there with the banks. The good part is that the public sector bank is still strong, and a lot of steps are being taken by the government in terms of, recently some of the banks have been amalgamated. And we are now talking about big banks, which is in terms of a global kind of a system we are adopting. And I hope that in coming period, the banks would convert themselves into digitally capable businesses, and they'll provide all that what a particular customer of a bank requires. And that includes some amount of financial education. In fact, a good part has been that banks also have insurance companies, and insurance products have been sold by banks in India, as part of the subsidiary. Now I'll come to Shri S.C. Agarwal, the chairman and managing director of SMC Global Securities, who's with us here, who is one of the stars in the trading business. Sir has been in this, in this particular business for a long time now, and he has seen the ups and downs of the economy. He has seen the Bombay Stock Exchange losing 90% of its business to a fintech controlled national stock exchange. If you remember, Mr. Ravi Narayan was with IDBI Bank. He was sent to Sweden. He picked up a model of Option 1 exchange and came back and set up India's first public sector stock exchange, National Stock Exchange of India Limited. And sir, from that point of time, it's almost like 27 years. I was in my MBA that year when National Stock Exchange was formed. And in fact, probably we got SEBI in 1992. Of course, SEBI in India came in 1992 when Securities and Exchange Commission was created in US in 1934, 33, 34. So almost 60 years late. But sir, last 27 years have been great for the stock markets, where now our market caps are almost like equal to GDP. But still, there are huge issues. As I said with Dr. Singh also, that we do have 8 crore mutual fund folios, but we still have very low participation in the capital markets of the common people. But now with technology coming in, we saw that during COVID times, there was a data which was flashed in press that a large number of young people are flocking into the market. These are tech-savvy young individuals. Today, let me tell you, I am an educator. All my students are at their hometowns and they're studying on computers. Young children are using mobile phones than ever before. It's a black swan event, once a 100-year event. It's not going to just change us as an individual, but also as a consumer, also as a saver, and also as an investor. So with this technology savvy generation moving forward? How do you see companies and trading businesses changing? How do you see the role of fintech, blockchains, distributed ledger systems? How do you see them coming to India? And how do you see these innovations providing more value to the underserved clients?
Uh, Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Dr. Pandey, you have told the entire story, how NSE had started, how this technology plays a bigger role. And as you know, before 95, Bombay Stock Exchange was the leader and they were commanding great volume in the market. But after coming to NSE, and they have started technology, computerized system of doing the transaction. So from outright system to computer-based transactions, and it has changed the entire system of the Scottish market. And you see, earlier in outright system, people assemble in a ring and do the trade after crying. And though a person, a broker who is having a greater voice, he will be able to do the transaction early. And a person like maybe a big broker, but if he doesn't shout, he cannot shout, he remain behind in doing the transaction. So that was the happening, that was the system. Now it is a white collar job, and people are doing the transaction sitting at home, sitting at any place throughout the world. So technology has changed the entire scene of trading. And as you rightly said, 8 crore mutual fund folios are there. But if you talk about in exchanges trading, it is around 2.5 crore, 3 crore. So it is much less. So, but if you see this COVID time, uh, uh, I think around 40 lakhs new accounts has opened in 4-5 months. That was a great figure because uh, new person, young students and even young millennial, you can say, they are opening their account through KYC, through this mechanism, online system. And there are fintech and blockchain has played a bigger role. And you see, if you see the blockchain role in share market, Nasdaq had started very early in 2018 and for private securities transactions. So Nasdaq link. So it was very successful. So New York Stock Exchange is also exploring to start blockchain, using of blockchain. And in the same way, SEBI has also constituted a committee to explore how we can use the blockchain technology. And blockchain technology initially used, as you know, in this cryptocurrency. So it was very successful there, and people, even China has adopted it. Australian Stock Exchange has adopted in part. So many stock exchange and regulators are adopting because it is a on the decentralization of data, on the basis of transparency, because their system distributed ledger is keeping all transactions record fully. So it is always stored, transparent, and this technology is used. You can avoid various intermediary, like as on today, one, if a client has introduced, if you want to do the trade, he will contact his sub-broker in turn will contact broker, exchange, then regulators, and so on. So various intermediaries are there. But this blockchain technology, it will reduce all intermediary costs. So it will be lower cost, fast processing, and it is very good in interoperability. As on today, interoperability is there. So it will reduce processing time and faster, reducing cost, transparent. So blockchain technology is definitely very good. And as you said, fintech role, fintech role in NBFC banks. They are now being the partner. Their fintech role, as Dr. Charan Singh has also said, fintech has played role in investor, small investor who cannot take loan, bank that don't have time to process their application. Through fintech it is possible. Yeah, so it is in total inclusive. So role of fintech and blockchain technology, SEBI is very much exploring, and I think it's a future technology, and it will revolutionize the stock market. It will revolutionize the securities, and all fraud which has happened. It will, I think, that frauds because of non-verification of certain records, non-verification in the absence of monitoring. Blockchain is having the facility to stop the transaction, to report any illegal transaction is happening, and they will point it out. So blockchain technology is having lot of plus points. So I think it's a future technology.
Sir, sir, the idea is great that you just now said that SEBI is very supportive of use of technology. But you know, we've been seeing like recent order on margins, the problem with National Stock Exchange, where you had the co-location issue in 2013-14. In fact, technology is yet to reach the heartland, as you know. Dr. Charan Singh had mentioned that it is the public sector banks which are the lifeblood of the country. Around 70% of business is done by. In the same vein, all the securities business still is centralized, and what you can say, it's concentrated at Mumbai. Probably we are seeing some good news that they will create some other center in Gujarat, GIFT city we are talking about. So with fintech, there is another thing called RegTech, regulatory technology. How do you see this regulation in India? Does it support innovation, technology innovation? What are your views? What have you seen over a period of time? And if it does not, what do we need to do about it?
Yeah, you see, Indian market is the one of the best exchange in the world, and even SEBI, they are regulating well. What we have done, still in world, omnibus system is there, but in SEBI and in exchanges, we are monitoring the transaction from client level itself, even individual client, whether he's a very small client, still unique client code is there. When every transaction is being reported to the exchanges by the intermediaries, and all controls are there, all margins on buy and sells are separately charged, and it is not being clubbed by on the broker level. So they are all playing all these things by technology. It is possible because of technology. We have T+2 settlement in cash system and T+1 in F&O. So we are much advanced with other countries, and everything is computerized, automated, and India is supporting automation. That is why SEBI has constitute the committee to implement blockchain, and they are seeing towards the world wherever blockchain is being implemented, what are the pros and cons. Even in China, blockchain they have adopted, but certain problems it has been seen they have regained. These are negative points, like legal and regulatory challenges are there. So it has to be worked out while adopting blockchain, because everything is transparent, all record is being generated at decentralized level. It is so all ledger system is there. So and that is why these pros and cons is there. Innovation is good, but you have to implement innovation after monitoring, after scrutinizing each and every aspects. So that is I think regulators are doing. And new margin system which has been implemented from 1st September. Here, what SEBI has done, and if you earlier what was there, if you have a stocks in your DP and you have given power of attorney to the broker, power of attorney, and on the basis of that power of attorney, broker can give you the entire limit on that basis. But some foul play were happening, so exchanges and SEBI regulator has decided that you place the shares and then you take the limits, margin limits. So that has been implemented, and I think uh, some hitches is some teething problems are there because it's 2 days back it has been implemented. So 15 days it will take for clearing all those teething problems, and I think it will be okay. And I am very optimistic that blockchain will play a definite role in this our security market. Even regulator will adopt it, and blockchain is having a lot of advantages.
Right. Thank you, sir. I think you sound very optimistic. And in fact, I can tell you 2-3 years ago when SEBI and RBI both won the best regulator award among the, our regulators are seen as one of the best in the world. It is a good sign. In fact, this is what has sustained us as a nation. Our regulators in terms of financial sector regulators, all of them have been great. In fact, with PFRDA coming in and what the new pension system coming in, we see a lot of action on account of moving savings into investment. Now I'll talk to I'll move to Mr. Naveen Gupta, who had earlier in his opening remarks spoken about the how we can implement some of these technologies and how these technologies actually work. I'll take you to one of the important ideas. There's something called expense automation service. As far as I don't think Mr. Rohit Bogade is here, but the fact is that what I feel is that when you talk about cash management, it needs to be convenient, it needs to be reliable, and of course, it has to help the strategic priority of the firms. You said that, if there is, if, for example, in cash management, we say you may have a lot of cash, but if your debt levels are very high, you're gone. Right? And you may have a lot of revenue. If it is not in terms of cash available with you, then also you're gone. Now, in this, there are a lot of new things which have come in. And one of the things which has come in is I would rather want you to focus on some of the tools which are available, especially with focus on expense automation services during these difficult times when the economy comes to a standstill, when the systems don't function and you do not allow operation of any kind, any operating activity going around in the economy. So I would like to know from you, and for the benefit of the audience, what are the technology tools which are available during these times for cash management? Like your company has it, Datamatics. I saw its website yesterday, and one of the major player in this sector. So you can give us an idea the cash delivery systems, about the cash delivery systems, the right technology tools, and expense automation systems also.
So Dr. Pandey, in expense automation, there are two kinds of expenses. One is to the supply for the production which you are doing, or indirect procurement also, which you are procuring for housekeeping or your stationery or for the office and your office. And one is the internal expense in the payment to your employees and the expense reimbursement. So to outside supplier, to a larger extent, quite a lot of our expense automation has happened where the integration, starting from your invoice data ingestion using RPA, where data is captured automatically, indexed, so workflow it is gone through, it is being sent through automatic approval process, and then finally posting into the ERP. So to large, quite a lot of it is automated. And when I'm talking to various partners of ours, we see all of them has imbibed on this journey, and a lot of them has already adopted the outside to the external party expense automation. To even internal also, if we see employees, there are many problems and the issues which happen with the employee not submitting at the bill on the time, or they're not getting paid in the time because it's a manual verification process. And particularly in the COVID, no one is there in the office, and sort of is the last priority on focusing on the employer expense reimbursement. There also we see a lot of tools and technology coming to the play where you can just click the picture of the bill from your mobile, and then it is ICR automatically data captured, cost code, your GL cost code, and category, and the category of expenses automatically captured, and you press a submit button and the complete workflow is submitted to your manager, which is going for the approval, and you have already clicked the picture. So even receipt is also there. Automation I have seen for the globe as well as particularly in India. It is taking lots and lots of precedence now, where people are either they have already adopted quite a large percentage in the manufacturing sector, particularly have already adopted, and people who have not. And during COVID time, interestingly, during COVID time, we have received 4-5 big inquiries from large, I would say, business houses of automating their expense automation. Dr. Pandey, am I audible?
Yeah. Please. No, I think, what
So on the
was,
Sorry,
there
go
are
ahead.
companies like just here a bit. MasterCard and other companies, Visa, MasterCard, they provide such solutions. In fact, one of the questions which always comes to my mind, I wish to ask that to Dr. Charan Singh and Sri Subhash Agarwal also. India actually, we have all these systems, they compete with each other. India is a country which works in silos. The problem of this country is the government, the industry, the academicians, everyone, works in a silos. Right? It's very rare that, I got a chance to become an independent director somewhere. I also work very closely with Multi Commodity Exchange. I am on their index committee. And, kind of activities where some people were active. I'm working, say, with Varun on ASSOCHAM. And I said, well, it'll be a wonderful idea. When do we see technology companies like MasterCard, those into financial payment systems, collaborating with the Indian corporates rather than competing with them, and especially with this expense automation systems? What is your view on that?
It's
So
a
basically, yeah, sorry. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Naveen
Go
Gupta.
ahead.
First, Mr. Naveen Gupta, and then Dr. Charan Singh.
So Dr. Pandey, if you see all, even our solutions, and not only Datamatics, other solutions also are tightly integrated with all these MasterCards and the Visas of this world, including your travel portals also. So today, earlier when they started the journey of expense reimbursement, they started putting the system, but now their system is becoming too out of the pocket. And that's where they are collaborating with people like us and the other players also, where it is tightly integrated, even for, they have given a corporate card, which is, let's say I'm using a MasterCard corporate card, are directly integrated with the expense management system and the reimbursement system. So they have started collaborating a lot.
Okay, sir, Dr. Charan Singh, I'll just come back to you on this. Like Google Pay, WhatsApp Pay, almost every technology company with Facebook purchasing a share in Jio, we see a changing landscape of financial services business, especially as far as the payment systems go. I'll come back to Mr. Akhil Chaudhary on the cash management systems in a while, but I'll come back to you on this. Why do we see so much of competition with global technology firms, especially from the bank side? When are we going to see Google Pay kind of systems being integrated with banks? Already UPI is there, but global technology firms collaborating with our banks.
I look forward to this development, honestly speaking. And I think over a period of time, this is bound to happen. I'm not sure, and I'm not very precise here, but I'm aware that in Silicon Valley before COVID, there was some relationships taking place and developing between the corporate world and the fintech companies and the banks. And that would have taken the e-commerce to a different level. So I think this is in offing, and very soon, as I told you, it will take about 5 to 10 years when you will find the marketplace becomes very different. And this will take time. It is an offering, but yes, right now we are not.
I'll come back to, before I go to Mr. Akhil Chaudhary, Datamatics as a company has a large number of products. I was pretty impressed seeing both Mr. Chaudhary's website, Veco Binary and Datamatics. And when it comes to these important solutions, which are very, very close to the heart of functioning an organization, various companies like Mr. Gupta, Atul Kumar Gupta, President Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, said that they are going to provide services to MSMEs and large number of companies. When you look at your solutions of cash management, especially from Datamatics side, which industries and which segments do you think are more probable users of such services, which are pretty advanced? They require investment in infrastructure. They probably require a payment to the service provider. How does it work? Which industries and which segments? Are MSMEs a client for this?
So, Dr. Pandey, you are right. MSME is certainly a client for it. But if I look at our industry segmentation, although we are finding quite a lot of attraction from services sector, banks, insurance, as well as manufacturing, but more so from manufacturing, if I have to compare with the relative terms, manufacturing is actually focusing quite a lot on the cash management and the automation, tools and technology, and transforming the CFO back office operations.
I'll come to Mr. Akhil Chaudhary on this. Sir, I think two questions. Two related questions. One, the same question which I asked Mr. Naveen Gupta. What kind of industry segments are probably going to be the users of such cash management systems, the investment side of it and all? Second, the cyber security part of it. What are the security concerns related to this? If, for example, say members of ASSOCHAM who are listening to this debate, and they are not too sure that if we implement such a system, of course, cyber security is something which is the Achilles heel of India's system. You know, you have huge problems. We still do not have that cyber law. And let me tell you, I told people at the Ministry of Electronics, Information Technology in a meeting one day that during 2016, we just had around 2,000 complaints of cyber frauds. In 2018-19, there were 160,000 FIRs lodged in this country on complaints related to payments or fraud in the systems. So first question, the VACO binary system and your products in cash management systems, what are the products? How do they really work? Which are the right industry systems? And what you feel? How secure are we when we transact on such systems? Mr. Chaudhary, Akhil Chaudhary. Sir, unmute yourself, please.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Like, as you rightly said, Dr. Pandey, that it is Achilles heel for India, but not just for India. I think globally it's a menace. See, but what has happened is over the last couple of centuries, what used to happen as robbery, dacoity, a lot of the figures of which are documented and undocumented both. But now it has grown to an area where it is getting more and more documented, or the data is getting captured. And I think if we look at it, 2014, the global cost of cybercrime was about 500 billion estimated, which grew to about 600 billion in 17, and it's expected to be closer to about $1 trillion each year. Now that's crazy if we look at the global dimensions. And we have had some unique cases. I think probably one of the central bank heist in Bangladesh in 2016, where cyber criminals, it was $101 million in a single heist, cybercrime heist. So the challenge is definitely large. But at the same time, what we need to look at is even in those pre-automated systems, there was a lot of leakage, a lot of revenue leakages, a lot of frauds that were happening, a lot of various ways in which whether revenues or expenses or other modes, the money was being channeled. But at the same time, since we are moving the digital way, what our endeavor has to be, how do we manage it far more effectively? And obviously, when we talk of problems, in terms of problem, I think starting from the basics, the malware, I think which we are really all of us are familiar with. But on the organizational side of it, what we really need to do is our IT teams or departments, if we are already not into the cloud, the strong patching that we need to do, we need to take care of app or middleware vulnerabilities. The challenge here is the biggest risk. I would say I'm not sure of the numbers, but I remember reading an article which said about 40% plus cyber crimes have some kind of connection to somebody internal to your organization. That means there is some information which with or without an intention is passed on to some outsiders, and which is taken advantage of and utilized by the hackers or cyber criminals. Now, obviously, the problem is compounded by the fact that we have a lot of mobile and bring your own device penetration in the marketplace. Companies are allowing BYODs. So one of the big kind of practices, or one of the best practices organizations can have over here, is have a comprehensive mobile device management strategy, and kind of even look at how do we manage effectively on the mobile devices that are brought in or used by people in the organization. Our own employees should not be using those non-compliant or jailbroken devices. People are very happy that I bought a jailbroken iPhone, latest version of iPhone, and I got it at half the price and so on. But then those create vulnerabilities for our organization and consequently for our customers too.
Okay, right.
And I think probably a subject. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. I can go on and on.
Right. I think we are close to 1 p.m. And what I feel is that cybersecurity as a particular area needs to be constantly being upgraded. Plus, we definitely need a wonderful new law. Of course, the government is debating on it. There are privacy issues, other issues. In fact, a lot of people are talking about it. But yes, cash management systems, as we understand them, both the idea of increasing consumer expectations, or what you call the cost of digital disruptions or regulatory changes, all of them basically combine when corporates are being offered as a solution, and probably your company would be looking into it, or the other Datamatics. So now I hand over to Mr. Varun Agarwal for the final comments by Sri Subhash Agarwal. Varun, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. Can I request Subhash Agarwal ji, Senior Managing Committee Member of ASSOCHAM and CMD of SMC Global Securities, to kindly present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Varun. First of all, I would like to congratulate ASSOCHAM and Varun and his team for conducting this program, Managing Cash Flows with Technology. I am privileged to present a vote of thanks on my behalf and on behalf of ASSOCHAM to Sri Dr. Lavnish Chanana, VP Government Relations and Chairman ASSOCHAM National Council on IT and E-Commerce. For his welcome address, he has started the topic and introduced what to speak, managing cash flows with technology. And so giving time, valuable time in this seminar, we would like to thank him. We would like to thank Sri Ashutosh Chadda ji, VP and Head Public Policy and Government Affairs, and Chairman ASSOCHAM National Council of FinTech. He has delivered his industry address on supply chain and other managing cash flows and technology. We will also like to welcome Sri Akhil Chaudhary, CEO and Managing Partner, Vaco Binary Sematic. So he has also delivered his industry address. And we would also like to thank Sri A. Atul Gupta, President ICI. He is my friend also. So he has talked about SME and reforms and the studies conducted by Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. We would also like to welcome Sri Rohit Bagade, Chief Financial Officer, India Subcontinent SAP. Sir, you have delivered industry address and highlights various points. We would also like to thank Sri Naveen Gupta, Executive Vice President, BPM Datamatics, Dr. and also Dr. Charan Singh, CEO, eGrow Foundation and Chairman, Association National Council for Banking. He has talked about fintech, financial inclusion, managing cash flow with technology, and very good moderation by Dr. Alok Pandeyji, Director IMS. So in a very nice way, he has conducted this panel discussion. So we would like to thanks and for his good knowledge about all the subject he has talked about. So it's a wonderful program. I think audience has taken, definitely they have taken good things and nice talk. Today's program of managing cash flows with technology and role of blockchain and fintech and various technology. So I conclude, and of course, we are thankful to the watchers, audience who are seeing this program, and those who have supported this seminar. We all are thankful to them. And I conclude here saying my thank you again, once again. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chaudhary sir. Thank you very much. Great to hear you.
Thank you, everyone.
And Dr. Singh, sir, thank you very much. Great interacting with you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I think nice meeting you.